sound as well?
Oh, it is, yes. So feel free to chat away.
I was going to say, I better watch my language. I don't know quite what the red 8F is in for. It has been in use. If it is in for attention, it's only minor. Then we've got Witherslack Hall here. That's actually the only engine that's owned by the Great Central Railway. All the other engines are privately owned, and of course the railway pay the owners for the use of them when they're in steam. I think the boiler for that is still at Tyseley. Just mind you back a bit, one of the workers here mustn't stop in. The wheels are at the back over there being worked on. I think the boiler's at Tyseley. And then in front of it you've got the front bogie to be fitted underneath. And this looks rather like the cab roof. So you get bits and pieces everywhere.
They're all just in for reconditioning and minor...
Well, this Hall was in for an overhaul, retubing the boiler, etc. So that...
sorry, my love.
Of course, they have their boiler certificates, which last for 10 years normally. And at the end of 10 years, the insurance company wants to re-inspect them. And the only way it can inspect the parts you can't see is to take it apart. And that's what's happened with Witherslack Hall. And of course, bearing in mind then that the insurance certificate is for a further 10 years, anything that looks as if it might go within 5 years has to be replaced, repaired or otherwise dealt with. So that's what's happening with that one. When in the good old days of British Railways, they used to take about 3 weeks to a month to go through that overhaul, but of course here when we don't have spare parts we have to make things, and of course we haven't got any money, it all takes an awful lot longer.
So, donations welcome at the door.
Oh yes, any way you like. This one here is another freight engine. It's similar to the red one there.
Another 8F?
Yeah, another 8F. It's undergoing overhaul, has been for some years. It's privately owned of course. And I think the owner owns one or two other engines that he's been working on, so this one's had to take a back seat. But I must admit, since I was last here, it looks as if one or two parts have been overhauled. They look like, to me, part of the braking system. And I think this is the brake rodding here. And then down here we've got the axle boxes.
And
These actually take the weight of the engine. They look a bit scruffy inside, but what's happened, they were a white metal alloy, and when they've been machined, polished up, had a drop of oil put on them, they actually form the bearing surface that take the weight of the engines onto the axles. And if you can imagine them being a bit like a saddle on a horse, if you turn them the other way up, they rest on top of the axles, one on each end. And that gives you a perfect bearing surface. And I think there's probably about 8 tons rests on each of these. So they take quite a lot of weight. And that here is the lubrication pad that goes underneath the axle.
I was going to ask if that's that one.
Yeah, and then there's a little pot at the bottom which has got the oil in. It permeates through to the pad, and then as the wheel goes round, it picks up the oil and keeps it lubricated. And if it runs dry, you have a hot box. It'll run hot, and it's a take it apart job again to redo it.
I see. Imagine the white metal would heat up and drop out.
Yes, it would decompose is the right word, but it will change and won't be a proper bearing surface again, so you've got to start all over again.
Well, touch wood and that doesn't happen.
Well, no, it doesn't. It shouldn't. But it occasionally does. Then here you've got the cylinders. It's got 2 cylinders, one on each side, and above here is the valve. I think the cylinders are about 18 inches wide in diameter, and probably about 28 inches long. I can't just remember the exact dimension. And here's one of the pistons that fits into the cylinder.
I was going to say, you've got one on the other side as well.
Yeah, that's right, one on each side. They're a bit bigger than the pistons in the car, but of course they don't move as fast.
Yes.
these rectangular holes here are the axle box, where the axle boxes fit, and they need to be machined so that they give a nice steady ride. I think you need a play of about 15 thousandths of an inch.
That's quite nice.
If you get it too tight, then it seize up. And if you get it too loose, the whole engine will shake and be uncomfortable.
Bang itself apart.
Yeah, it would eventually, yes. So that's being measured now, and then the axle boxes will have to be machined into, fitted in there. And because they have to be so carefully fitted, you only get, the one that comes out has to go into the same one.
Sort of bed themselves in with age.
Yeah, that's it, and then they start to become loose. And down here you've got the connecting rods. There would be 1, 2, 3, 3 on each side, I would think. 3, yeah. So probably one of those fits on the other side, and then you've got the small rods down there, and rods for working the valves.
Oh, fantastic.
I assume this chimney's off this engine, but I don't know. But if you look inside, they're not quite the same shape inside as outside. They are actually look nice.
Yeah. I think was it Robinson who said that a chimney on a locomotive is like a hat on a gentleman?
It sounds very like something he could well have said, yes. Yes,
I believe it was him who complained about other engineers later on who made adjustments to his locomotives and
well be so, yes.
knocked bits off from them.
They certainly took a lot of pride in designing their engines, and also to make sure they didn't look so untidy, unlike the American ones that seem to have pipes and
a bit more utilitarian.
Sticking out everywhere.
Accelerated
Move on a bit.
from 0 miles an hour to a couple of 100 miles an hour.
And over there we've got 73156, which is undergoing, I think that's restoration. I don't think that's running preservation since it was withdrawn in the 1960s.
Oh, right.
And the boiler was outside. We just haven't got room in here for
Boiler
everything.
pressure in the first place. To me,
Where those two labs are over there, you can just see the top of the wheel of one of the wheels of Weatherslack Hall. It's being painted. And down there we've got 63601, which is a freight engine. It's an original Great Central engine, built in 1912, so it's over 100 years old now. The insurance certificate on that one has run out, and it's in fact owned by the National Railway Museum. They haven't got any money for an overhaul, we haven't got any money for an overhaul, so it's just out of use awaiting something to happen. And then we've got a frame there for a new tender that's being built. Well, I say being built, I think the frame is a restoration job, but probably the tank had rusted through and there's a new tank being assembled somewhere.
Ah, I see.
They're fairly simple actually, well comparatively simple, just to bolt on.
Just a quick fabrication job and...
That's right, yeah, and then you get the frame, get the tank and put them together. A bit like a lot of things on steam engines, everything comes apart.
Yeah.
And this one here is an industrial engine. It's never been used by British Railways. It's been used in coal mines, paper factory, I think.
Oh, right.
Anywhere where industry needs a shunter, this will do the job. It's quite a large shunter. These are its wheels here.
Almost looking at the cab line and obviously the ND on, would it be a 94?
It is almost identical to a J94, yes, except that this one wasn't, because it wasn't used by British Railways.
I do come under the classification. I see.
When they, if an industrial company wanted a shunter, the cheapest thing, of course, was to go for one that was already a design they'd already got on the book, on offer. So British, the London North Eastern Railway built quite a lot. And then, of course, in those days, quite often engines were built by private companies, like the North British. And if they had the design, they would offer it to other people too. And that's what's happened to this one. So yes, it is a J94, but it isn't.
So it's a little bit unique, I suppose, in that respect.
Well, there's several of them.
Oh, there are one or two
Oh, yes,
more.
there were.
Ah, I see.
But most of them just ended up in the back of the factory, and that was it. And they rusted away until they were neither use nor ornament. This one has been preserved.
Interesting to see in the future when it's back together what what guise it takes, I suppose, in the end.
Well, of course, it's very much up to the owner. It's privately owned, like a lot of other engines. That Ed8F, the owner liked it in red, so it's painted in red. But he never wore that colour in British Railways days. Freight engines were always black. But if you own it, you can do what you like.
Well, I say it does rather suit it, I suppose.
I think it looks quite smart, actually. It reminds me of the Jubilees. They were red. One or two of those were red. We've got various parts for this one here.
Leaf springs and that.
Yeah, if you want to take a photograph of its history, there's a potted history here.
Oh, I see.
Which I haven't got my glasses on tonight. I don't know whether your machine will...
I see it's a Hunslet. I see.
And there you see it says not a J94.
See, if we started this, then I'll save myself an awkward question.
Well,
here we go.
I showed I know the answer.
I see it. Collieries and all sorts.
Oh, yeah. Been around a bit. Scotland, Kent.
There's Wakefield and County Durham. All everywhere. It's the sort of thing you never consider when you look at them and that and think about the history, that even before those locomotive exchanges, the mileage they were doing and where they were travelling and doing it's impressive that these things just keep going, I suppose.
Well, they're all renewable. I mean, this is Boscastle, that Boscastle Society run these shed tours, of course.
Oh, right.
And we're getting on with it. This is a 3-cylinder engine, of course. You can see the middle cylinder down the middle there, where we haven't yet covered it up.
Is there just another, as you say, an insurance certificate overhaul?
No, there was a bit more than that to this one. It was the first large engine to come to the Great Central in 1973.
Okay.
And it took 20 years to get it going again.
Oh.
Because it was in a bit of a poor state and we haven't got any money. And then it ran from 1990 to 1997, at which point we had trouble with the firebox. Because when it was on British Railways in about mid-60s, they did a make, do and mend job to keep it going for another 6 months, because they knew they were going to withdraw it, so they didn't spend any more money on it than they had to. And that is why the firebox gave up. It had cracks in it. So while we're doing the firebox, you might as well do the whole lot as well, because you've got to get the boiler off. The boiler was outside there, and we're working on it. As you can see from the pile of parts, a lot has been done. Quite a lot needs putting back together again, but we're getting there.
You say it looks so sort of on the home straight, if you will.
Yeah.
Or is it just appearances?
It depends how long your home straight is.
Yeah, it's very true, I suppose.
The running gear and cab fittings are not far off. We haven't got any rods on it yet, but they are around somewhere. I think they're around the other side. But the boiler hasn't been started yet. And of course that is what takes the money and the time. But bearing in mind that the insurance certificate only relates to the boiler, you don't want to start the clock ticking for its 10 years until you're actually ready to go. So you always do the boiler last.
Yes, I appreciate that.
And then it will you get the most out of it.
Fantastic.
So as you can see, we've got various parts here. They're quite complicated when you come to look at them. You can see here various lubrication pipes that go to different parts of the loco. And on the top here is an automatic lubricator. Well, there's a couple of automatic lubricators. You need 3, one for each cylinder. One on the other side, 2 on this one, and one of these feeds through to the middle. But again, looking at that, plenty of pipes. Somebody knows where they all go, I don't.
I imagine it must take quite a while and quite an art form to cut the pipe to the right length and have it bent and done first time.
This is one of the problems, and actually finding out where to feed them through the holes. Because you've got to get them in the right order. And of course, if you put something there and then suddenly realise you've got to get a plate in there, you're in difficulty. But we do use old-fashioned methods like labels to remind us where things go.
It must be sort of almost joyous now when you come across any sort of paperwork or drawings and diagrams that help, I suppose, with the arrangement of these things.
Drawings and diagrams are available generally. I don't know exactly how many drawings we found for this one, but it was built at Brighton in 1946. The London Brighton South Coast Railway works in Brighton. Nowadays, the National Railway Museum has got a number of drawings, but sometimes they're not too helpful because you come across, you might say, well, what sort of steel do you want? There's various sorts of steel, as I'm sure you know.
Grades. And
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And you find best Yorkshire steel as the description, which isn't an awful lot of help these days.
It's more of an opinion than a recommendation.
In the days when it was built, everybody knew what that was. It was a definition, but of course over the years the definition has been lost. So yeah, sometimes there's it gets more difficult.
So I suppose it's extra research and into the foundries and their processes and what they would have done.
And then of course you still have to make sure that it conforms to modern requirements.
Oh yeah.
Notice the wheels on this one, they're not spokes. They're an American design which I suppose is a little lighter and stronger. And I think they're more expensive as well, but still.
Rather impressive looking, aren't they, when
they are.
You look at them? Yeah.
Unfortunately, they've got a pocket in here. Trying to scrape out the dirt of 30 years out of those little recesses was not easy.
Yeah, I can imagine that there must have been no day when you thought you could take it off and sandblast it. It must have been.
Well, I think it was more than sandblasting. It needed digging and drilling out some of it. But we got it out and repainted them properly. So they should last. I think this is part of the brake cylinder. Looks like it. And there's a bit more braking there. And I think that is the reversing rod to alter the valves when it's all put back together again.
That just sits along the outside of the boiler.
Yep, tubes here. Various nuts and bolts there stuck on pieces of cardboard ready to go back.
I have a method like that at home as one of my bits, and I always find out that I end up with an odd nut and bolt and an odd piece of cardboard. So I have to adopt that method of putting them through the car. That's quite novel, that.
And of course we do try to repaint everything as soon as it's been restored. It preserves it. And this place is not airtight. It's not even watertight in places if you look up at the wrong point.
Oh, we'll not do that.
So, painting them up, it does preserve them. And of course, this engine, we haven't talked about this one behind us. On that one, the motion is all greased up. Looks absolutely decrepit, but all you need to do is to get the grease off, and it's fine. So that's how we, preserve them. On here, there's a plate here. It's a rubbing plate. One problem with steam engines, of course, is that when they get hot, they expand, which is fine for the boiler, but the frames don't expand. So normally on the steam engine, the boiler is only fastened at the front end, and it slides on these pads at the back. And this is just a clamp that clamps the boiler down, so it can move, I don't know, 1/10 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch, whatever the figure is.
As much as that?
Well, perhaps not 1/4, but certainly
no,
1/10.
It's still quite a way. Isn't it?
You certainly have to allow for it. So that's what that is. And then of course we've got it's a wide firebox engine. The firebox actually fits over the top of the frames on this one. On the flat engine behind us here, you can't see it because it's within the frames, and that's a narrow firebox engine. And then you've got the pony truck at the end here to take the weight.
So what sort of axle load is on that then? Obviously we're having the fire above it and everything else.
Well, the whole engine weighs 86 tonnes, I think. So you get about 60 tonnes on the driving wheels, at least 26 tonnes between the other three axles. So there's not an awful lot of weight on it. I would have thought probably 8-10 tonnes maybe, no more.
I imagine it must add to the ride comfort as well for the crew.
Oh yes, it helps to steady the engine, certainly. And just here we've got one of the oil pots. Before you went out on a trip, the fireman, usually with the fireman, would be expected to go around and fill up all the oil points on the engine.
I imagine there must be quite a lot on a Loco this size.
Well, this one's not too bad because it's got the automatic lubricator, but it's still, you probably have 20 or 30. You see down here on these rods, you've got a cork there which would come out, be topped up, to oil the bearing in there. So yeah, I guess you look at 30 or 40 points overall. Not just the ones you can see easily, but the ones for the middle cylinder that you had to crawl underneath to get at.
Maybe being a
Dirty
bit
job.
shorter and thinner would be of an advantage then for getting into the gaps and this sort
Yes,
of
it
thing.
would help if you weren't too portly. Certainly. And I think these are part of the brake rigging again.
Fantastic. So where are we going now? Sorry,
No, we've got
follow you.
wandering down here, yeah. At the back there, we've got 78018. That's a restoration job that's come in as a bit of... You can go up there if you want to look at it. Come in as a contract job. The people who own it got so far with the restoration and then wanted us to finish it off, which is what we're doing.
Ah, I see.
Boiler is outside, I think, or it might have been sent away, I'm not sure. But,
So with it say being a contract job, is there sort of like a time upon it for we'd like to have it done by?
I expect well, they'd like to have it done yesterday.
Well,
But
yeah.
no, I don't know. I'm not privy to the details of contracts.
No, I wasn't.
No, we take on outside work if appropriate, and similarly, if we've got a job here that we can't do or want to do in a hurry, then provided we can afford it, it's farmed out. So it works both ways. And behind us is a machine shop. This bit at the back here is actually rented out to somebody who helps with restoration on it in a private capacity.
Ah, would you? That's good then. So at least you know there's somebody sort of near enough always around for...
Oh yeah, there's a lot of skills here, and there's a number of people who would like to, come and join us. Some do it on a voluntary basis, some don't. We have a few salaried staff. Yeah, just to show we're all human, and the fact that the engine did run on the Great Central. The top right, it's just outside Loughborough Station, as you may recognise.
So hopefully one day soon we recreate the picture.
Oh yeah, well, as I say, we did for 7 years.
Fantastic.
You can see here some of the bits and pieces which we have to make, really. You can't go to a shop and buy these parts anymore. And